Hello, dear YouTube viewers. I hope you are doing well. Okay, let's start our video. I've always been the kind of man who keeps his emotions steady, no matter the situation. My friends call me unshakable, and my wife used to joke that nothing could ever get a rise out of me. In most parts of our marriage, that calmness kept things peaceful. We rarely argued, and I always tried to approach disagreements with logic rather than anger. From the outside, we looked like a couple that had everything figured out. But anyone who lives inside a relationship knows that what happens behind closed doors paints a far more complicated picture. My wife has a playful personality, quick with jokes, sarcasm, and teasing remarks. Most of the time, I could laugh along. But sometimes, her humor crossed into territory that stung more than she realized. She had a habit of bringing up her ex in passing, slipping his name into conversation as if it meant nothing. She never spoke about him with longing, but the comparisons, intentional or not, were always there, hidden beneath laughter. I tried to brush it off at first. I told myself she didn't mean anything by it, that it was just part of her light-hearted nature. And for a long time that worked. I convinced myself that staying calm was the best way to keep our marriage balanced. Avoid conflict, avoid drama, let things go. That was the rule I lived by. Still, a small, quiet tension lived in the background. A part of me always wondered why her past needed to be mentioned at all, especially when it involved comparing me to someone she claimed to belong over. I never imagined that one joke would cross the lines so sharply that it would force me to break my silence. We met in the most ordinary way possible, through mutual friends at a small gathering neither of us originally planned to attend. She walked in late, laughing at something someone said outside, and for a moment, everything else in the room blurred. She had this energy about her, a mix of confidence and warmth that pulled people in effortlessly. I wasn't the type to make bold moves, but something pushed me to talk to her that night. We ended up standing in a corner for hours, talking about everything from childhood memories to our favorite movies. By the time the night ended, I knew she was someone I wanted in my life. Our relationship moved naturally, without games or dramatic twists. The first year of our marriage felt almost surreal in how smooth it was. We communicated well, respected each other, and built routines that made our home feel peaceful. We cooked together, spent lazy Sundays watching shows, and laughed more often than not. If anyone had asked me then, I would have said I had found the perfect partner. Of course, every person carries their past with them, and hers included an ex she had dated for a few years before me. From what she told me, he was charming but unreliable, someone who talked big but rarely followed through. Their breakup wasn't messy. It was simply the realization that they wanted different things. Still, his presence lingered in small, unimportant ways. A shared music playlist, a story she'd tell, a joke related to their old arguments. I never thought much of it at first. Everyone has history. But sometimes, she'd bring him up casually, almost carelessly, in moments that didn't call for it. A comparison here, a teasing comment there, things that seemed harmless on the surface. Each time, I felt a small twist inside, a mix of discomfort and confusion. Was she testing me? Trying to get a reaction? Or was it just her sense of humor slipping into places it didn't belong? I couldn't tell. There were subtle signs that she enjoyed seeing how unbothered I always appeared. Maybe my calmness made her push boundaries without realizing it. Maybe she wanted to know if anything could actually shake me. I didn't think much of it then, but eventually, it became clear that some boundaries, once crossed, can't be ignored. It happened on a quiet Saturday evening, one of those calm, comfortable nights where nothing significant is planned, but everything feels easy. We had spent part of the afternoon with a couple of friends who dropped by for coffee and casual chatter. The mood had been light, full of teasing and harmless jokes. My wife, especially, had been in a playful spirit all day. She laughed louder than usual, teased more freely, and threw around sarcastic comments like confetti. Everyone else found it entertaining, and to be honest, so did I for the most part. After our friends left, the house settled into a warm stillness. The sun had dipped low, casting orange light through the living room windows. We curled up on the couch, scrolling through our phones, trading random comments and little jokes. She nudged me with her foot, smirking at something she had seen online, and the playfulness continued. It felt normal on the surface, but there was a slight edge to her mood, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. It wasn't bad, just different. There was a moment when she stared at me a little too long after one of her jokes. Not in a loving way, not in a mischievous way, more like she was waiting. Waiting to see if I would react, laugh, protest, or show even a crack in the calmness I was known for. I brushed it off, telling myself she was just being silly. But a part of me sensed that she was pushing a little harder than usual, almost like she was testing the limits of how far her teasing could go. I didn't address it. I simply smiled, nodded, and kept the mood light. That was my default setting. Stay calm, keep the peace. Looking back, I realized she had been inches away from crossing a line all evening. I just didn't know yet that she was about to take that final step. It happened so casually that, for a second, I wondered if I had even heard her correctly. We were still lounging on the couch, scrolling through our phones, when she stumbled on a silly meme about relationships. She snorted, nudged me with her elbow, and said, "You know, you're great and all, but my ex was definitely bigger and better." She said it with a laugh, one of those breathy, teasing laughs she used when she wanted to sound playful, but also check my reaction. Her eyes flicked up to mine, searching, almost calculating. The smirk on her lips told me she thought it was harmless, just another one of her jokes. But the way her eyebrows rose slightly, the way she leaned back as if waiting for a punchline to land, all of it hinted at something more. She wanted to see if she could finally break the calm exterior I always carried. For a moment, the world felt strangely silent. The glow from her phone lit one side of her face, highlighting a playful expression that suddenly seemed out of place. My brain froze, not because I was angry, but because I genuinely didn't know how to process the mix of emotions that hit me all at once. Shock came first, then confusion, and under that a low, dull ache that surprised me with its sharpness. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't insecurity. It was the sting of blatant disrespect wrapped neatly in a joke she thought I'd simply brush aside. Inside, I debated my options. Should I laugh it off like she expected? Pretend it didn't bother me? Or confront it directly and risk turning the evening into a fight over something she'd insist was just humor? A part of me wanted to ignore it, to let it slide like always. Peace was comfortable, familiar, but something in her expression told me she was waiting for a specific reaction, something flustered, insecure, maybe even angry. She expected me to crack, to finally show that she had hit a nerve. Her eyes gleamed with anticipation, as if she had been building up to this moment all day. She thought she had found the joke that would finally shake me. She didn't realize yet that she had crossed the one line I never expected her to cross. And while my exterior stayed calm, unmoving, unreadable, something inside me clicked into place. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I let a long, deliberate silence settle between us. I kept my eyes on my phone, not reading anything, just giving myself a moment to breathe. My heartbeat was steady, but my mind felt unnervingly clear, like cold water had been poured through my thoughts. I wasn't going to lash out. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I was simply going to tell the truth. When I finally looked at her, my expression was calm, too calm. She must have felt it because her smirk faded just a little. "If he was bigger and better," I said quietly, "then why did you choose me?" Her eyes widened, but I didn't stop there. My voice stayed level, flat, almost detached. "And if he really was everything you say, it's strange you're still comparing him to me. I don't compete with your past, but it's sad you still live in it." The words were simple, not loud, not cruel, but they landed like a blade sliding cleanly into a soft surface. No aggression, no insult, just pure cold logic. She blinked, the laugh she had been expecting from me dying instantly. Her posture shifted. The confidence in her shoulders dropped, and her mouth opened as if she wanted to speak, but couldn't find the right words. The playful shine in her eyes vanished, replaced with something stunned, and then something defensive. I was joking. she said quickly, her voice softer than before, almost uncertain. You know I didn't mean it like that. But the tone wasn't light anymore. She suddenly looked uncomfortable, as if the room had become too quiet, too tense for the kind of humor she'd been throwing around all day. Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of the blanket, and she avoided my gaze like she wasn't sure what she'd see there. I kept my expression neutral. A joke usually comes from something harmless, I replied, still calm. But you don't joke about things that don't exist in your mind. Her breath caught. I saw it. The moment she realized she had pushed too far, expected the wrong reaction, and misjudged the impact of her words entirely. The silence that followed wasn't like the earlier pause. This one was heavy, thick with understanding she hadn't anticipated. She had been prepared for a flustered reaction, maybe even a jealous one. But she wasn't prepared for an emotionless truth spoken without hesitation. She had thrown a spark, expecting a flicker. Instead, it hit a wall of ice. She swallowed hard, her earlier confidence dissolving into something fragile. Come on, she said quietly, forcing a small smile. It was just a joke. You know I don't actually mean any of that. Her voice trembled on the last word, and for the first time that evening, she looked genuinely unsure of herself. She shifted closer, as if proximity could soften what she'd said minutes earlier. But I didn't pull away or react. I simply held her gaze with a calmness that made her nervous. I know you think it was a joke, I said evenly. But that doesn't make it any less disrespectful. My tone wasn't angry, just steady measured. You don't compare your partner to someone from your past, not even playfully. You don't bring someone else into our relationship like that, especially not to make a point or get a reaction. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her eyes darted around the room, as though searching for a safe place to land. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she whispered. I didn't think you'd take it seriously. That's the problem, I replied. You didn't think. Or maybe you thought I wouldn't say anything because I usually don't. That struck her. I could see it in the way her posture shrank, her shoulders curling inward as if she were bracing against a cold wind. The room felt heavier now, not with anger but with realization. Her words had landed in a place deeper than she expected. She let out a shaky breath. I guess I went too far. I nodded, still calm. You did. And I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because respect matters to me. More than jokes. More than pretending everything is fine. She looked at me, really looked this time, and something in her expression softened. The playful teasing from earlier was long gone, replaced by an emotion far more vulnerable. I didn't think it would matter this much to you, she admitted. I've always thought you were unshakable. I'm not unshakable, I said gently. I just choose when to react. And I choose what deserves my energy. For a moment, neither of us spoke. There was no yelling, no bitterness, just honesty lingering in the air. The kind of honesty most couples avoid because it's uncomfortable. But discomfort, I realized, sometimes reveals more truth than comfort ever could. She reached for my hand slowly, cautiously. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't realize how wrong it sounded until you repeated it back to me. And just like that, the conversation shifted, not into anger, but into understanding. A door had opened, and now we were stepping into a deeper part of our relationship, one built not on jokes and assumptions but on truth. She sat there quietly for a moment, her fingers tracing small circles on the blanket between us. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a softness I wasn't used to hearing from her. I think sometimes I say things without thinking because I want a reaction from you, she admitted, eyes lowered. You're always so calm, so composed. Sometimes it feels like nothing I say gets through to you. It wasn't bitterness in her tone, it was insecurity. A quiet fear that maybe she didn't affect me the way she wanted to. She lifted her eyes slowly, and I could see a mixture of guilt and vulnerability clouding them. I didn't mean what I said about my ex. Not even a little. I was just trying to be funny. Or maybe trying to get your attention. she sighed, running a hand through her hair. He used to react to everything, even stupid comments. And when he did, it made me feel like I mattered somehow, like my words had weight. Her shoulders slumped as she added, "With you, sometimes I feel like I can't tell if I've made an impact. And I guess that makes me push too far." It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation, and an honest one. "Tonight," she continued, "I thought if I joked like that, you'd get flustered or roll your eyes or something. Anything." She shook her head at herself. "I didn't think it would hurt you. I didn't think you'd take it seriously." She swallowed hard, and for the first time, her voice cracked. "But when you answered me the way you did, I realized I stepped over a line I didn't even see until it was too late." Her walls were down now, the playful mask gone. In its place was a woman grappling with her own insecurities and the consequences of crossing a boundary she hadn't respected. And in that moment, she wasn't offensive anymore, just human, exposed, and genuinely remorseful. I took a deep breath, letting the quiet stretch between us before speaking. "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice steady, calm. "Not because I want to fight or make you feel bad, but because I think you need to understand how this has felt for me over time. For months, even years, I've noticed the comparisons. Small ones at first, little comments about your ex, jokes you thought were harmless. And each time, there was a tiny sting. Not because I'm insecure, but because it felt like you were measuring me against someone who isn't even in our lives anymore. It made me question things I shouldn't have to question in my own marriage." I paused, watching her carefully. She wasn't offensive now, just listening, vulnerable. "I stayed quiet before," I admitted, "because I value peace more than proving a point. I wanted to choose my battles wisely. I thought staying calm, not reacting, would make things easier for both of us. But staying silent doesn't mean I wasn't affected. It just means I was hoping you'd see my worth without needing to test me. I've realized something important tonight," I continued. "Respect matters more than ego, more than pride. A relationship can't thrive if it's built on jokes that hurt, on words thrown carelessly to see a reaction. Love isn't about proving who's bigger, better, or stronger. It's about trust, honesty, and understanding. And when one partner keeps dragging the past into the present, it erodes that foundation, slowly, quietly, almost invisibly." I looked at her, letting my words sink in. "I'm calm because I choose to be. I don't need to yell to make a point. I don't need to compete with your past to feel secure. But I do need you to understand that crossing that line tonight, intentionally or not, wasn't just a joke to me. It touched something deeper. And I hope that, going forward, you'll see why I can't let it slide again." There was a weight to my honesty, but also clarity. No anger. No theatrics. Just the truth, delivered calmly, so that she could finally understand the real impact of words she had thought were harmless. She exhaled slowly. A tension I hadn't realized was building finally, leaving her shoulders. I'm really sorry," she whispered, her eyes glistening. "I didn't think it through, and I see now how wrong I was. It wasn't funny, and I shouldn't have said it." Her apology wasn't rushed or casual. It carried weight, and I could see the sincerity in every syllable. I reached out and took her hand gently. "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot. I know you didn't intend to hurt me, but it's important that we recognize when boundaries are crossed." For the next few minutes, we simply reflected together. We talked about why certain comments had been made, the insecurities and habits that led to them, and how we had each interpreted past words. I explained that comparisons, even in jest, create gaps in trust over time, and she admitted she hadn't realized the cumulative effect. Together, we set clear boundaries regarding past relationships. She agreed to leave the ex in the past, and I promised to express myself if anything she said ever crossed a line again. It wasn't about blame. It was about mutual understanding and protection of the relationship we'd built. By the end of the conversation, there was a renewed sense of balance. I felt my confidence restored, knowing I could stand firm calmly without letting emotions rule my response. She seemed more mindful, aware that words have weight and that playful teasing has limits. A sense of partnership returned, one grounded in honesty and respect rather than assumptions or tests. Sitting back later that night, I reflected on everything that had happened. Calmness, I realized, is often more powerful than anger. It allows truth to speak for itself without needing to fight or escalate. Uncomfortable conversations, the ones we often avoid, are precisely the ones that grow relationships. They strip away misunderstandings and expose what truly matters. Our discussion reminded me that respect isn't just about politeness. It's about valuing someone's feelings, past experiences, and boundaries. And sometimes, a single, composed response can change the course of a relationship more than 1,000 angry words ever could. As I looked over at her, I knew one thing for certain. Tonight's ice-cold comeback hadn't just silenced a joke. It had shifted the foundation of our marriage, making it stronger, clearer, and more resilient than ever before. She exhaled slowly, the tension in her shoulders finally giving way. "I'm really sorry," she said softly, her voice almost breaking. "I didn't think it through, and I see now how wrong I was. It wasn't funny, and I shouldn't have said it." Her apology felt genuine, weighted with the understanding she had gained in the silence that followed my response. I reached out and gently took her hand. "Thank you," I said quietly. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but words like that cross lines. It's important we recognize when boundaries are pushed, even unintentionally." We spent the next few minutes reflecting together, not in anger, but in honesty. She shared how her teasing often came from insecurity, from wanting to see a reaction or to feel noticed. I explained how repeated comparisons, even meant as jokes, can create distance and erode trust over time. It was not about blame. It was about understanding each other better and communicating clearly. From that conversation, we agreed to set boundaries around discussing past relationships. The ex would remain firmly in the past, never brought up as a measure of anyone's worth or value. I assured her that I would express myself calmly if ever a line was crossed again, and she promised to be more mindful of how her words might affect me. By the end, a sense of renewed understanding and partnership had emerged. I felt my confidence restored, not because I had won an argument, but because truth and composure had prevailed. She seemed more reflective, aware now of the power her words held and the responsibility that comes with joking at someone else's expense. The tension that had hung over us that evening was gone, replaced by a quiet harmony built on honesty, respect, and awareness. In that moment, it felt like we had grown, not just as a couple, but as individuals capable of seeing and honoring each other's feelings while maintaining the love that had brought us together in the first place. As I sit back and think about what happened that evening, I realize how powerful calmness can be. Anger often feels immediate and satisfying, but it rarely resolves anything. A composed, deliberate response has a weight of its own. It forces reflection, demands attention, and speaks louder than any raised voice ever could. Tonight was proof of that. By staying calm, I was able to communicate my truth without escalating tension, and in doing so, I reached a place of understanding that anger never could have achieved. I've also learned that relationships grow most during uncomfortable conversations, not easy ones. Avoiding conflict may keep the surface smooth, but it does nothing for the foundation. It's in the moments when honesty is laid bare, when vulnerabilities are shared, that trust strengthens and love deepens. My wife and I faced something awkward, even painful, and yet it became a turning point for us. Respect, I realized, is the true cornerstone of any partnership. It's not about pride, ego, or winning arguments. It's about seeing each other, honoring feelings, and choosing words that build rather than break. Emotional maturity isn't a trait. It's a practice, cultivated one deliberate choice at a time. As I glance over at her now, I know that one calm, carefully measured reply didn't just end a joke. It shifted the dynamic of our marriage. It reminded us both of what truly matters and quietly set the tone for a stronger, more honest, and more respectful future together. Thanks for watching. For more videos, please subscribe our channel Awesome Visual Story.